Greetings and welcome to Tim's Chalk of History. Today we're going to be discussing why the Pilgrims created the colony of Plymouth. I had a coach in high school that used to always say, you have to stand for something. And the Pilgrims, they certainly believed in something. And we're going to be talking about that today. So the Plymouth colony is going to be different than the Jamestown and Roanoke colonies in the aspect that it was established for religious reasons, where the Roanoke and Jamestown colonies, they're going to be established for economic reasons. So what was the driving force behind the establishment of the Plymouth colony? Well, it was established by a group known in England at the time as the Separatists. And the reason why they were called the Separatists was because they wanted to completely separate from the Church of England. So the Separatists wanted to separate from the Church of England for a lot of reasons. One of the major reasons was that it was a law that all English citizens had to attend Mass at the Church of England. And if they did not, they were fined. So the Separatists, who would later become known as the Pilgrims, had a big problem with the English government, with one, forcing them to believe in a form of Christianity of which they did not want to believe in, and two, attending a church that they did not want to go to, and being fined for not attending that church. And aside from being fined for believing in something that was contradictory to the Church of England, they were also treated unfairly by other English citizens for what they believed. So, for instance, sometimes they were not hired for jobs because of their religious beliefs. And if they were found doing things like spreading their religious beliefs to children or practicing their beliefs in public, their beliefs that were different from the Church of England's beliefs, they were arrested. Sometimes they were thrown in jail cells, or sometimes they were put in stockings like you see in this picture, and they would kind of be made an example of to the rest of the English citizens. English authorities would say, hey, to the rest of the people, here's what's going to happen to you if you go around spreading beliefs that are different from the Church of England. Right? Here's what happens when you don't attend church, or here's what happens when you talk about your beliefs to children when they're different from the beliefs of the Church of England. And a lot of historians have concluded that it took the Pilgrims a great deal of courage to continue to believe in what they had believed in when they were experiencing heavy amounts of religious persecution over in England. So after several years of experiencing religious persecution over in England, the Pilgrims asked the King of England at the time, who was King James, if they could go over and establish a settlement over in English claimed lands in North America. King James said yes and issued them with a charter, which is a government document granting permission to do something. So in this case, King James was issuing a charter to the Pilgrims to establish the Plymouth colony over in English claimed lands in North America. So William Bradford is going to emerge as the leader of the Pilgrims during this time. He's going to begin organizing funds for the Pilgrims to purchase the ships and supplies they needed to make the dangerous voyage across the Atlantic Ocean so they could establish their colony in North America. Now, it's important to take into consideration that it was extremely dangerous to travel across the Atlantic Ocean during this time with the ship technology that Europeans had available to them. So in 1620, the Mayflower and the Speedwell, those are the two ships that the Pilgrims were able to get a hold of to complete this journey across the Atlantic Ocean with. And on their way across the Atlantic Ocean, They were originally planning on landing in the area where the modern day city of New York City is. But they're going to be blown way off course by some harsh storms they encounter. And these storms are going to push back their arrival time as well. So they're going to arrive in North America much later than expected. So by the time they arrive in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is where they end up, um, they're going to arrive there during the wintertime. The men are going to get out of the boat. They're going to begin building the settlement. A lot of the passengers on both of the ships are going to die of diseases and starvation during this first winter that they spent on the ships. And then when the weather breaks in the spring, they're finally able to finish up the settlement and people begin living in the area of Plymouth, Massachusetts. Just to give you an idea of where Plymouth, Massachusetts is located, it's right in the southeastern part of the modern day state of Massachusetts in the Cape Cod Bay area. So before the Pilgrims leave the ships that winter to settle within the Plymouth colony, they're going to create a document known as the Mayflower Compact. Now, this is a very significant document in American history because it will later influence the writing of the U.S. Constitution. So within the document, the Pilgrims are going to state that they're going to abide by some democratic principles. Some of these include having weekly town meetings where all the men are going to vote on sets of laws to ensure everyone in the colony lives peacefully. This is going to be their first attempt at self government, independent of the King of England. So, the Mayflower Compact is an aspect of the Plymouth colony that is very successful early on, in spite of all the other problems they face in the early weeks and months of the establishment of the colony. So, for instance, they're not going to be aware of where the good hunting spots are, or where the good fishing spots are, or even what animals to hunt, or what crops grow well over in North America. So they are going to have problems finding food. Okay. And they're going to experience a little bit of a food shortage. And they begin interacting with the Native Americans a little bit, and they notice the Native Americans are very skilled at living off of these lands in North America, and rightfully so. They have inhabited them for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the nearby Native Americans, the Wampanoag tribe, they knew what animals to hunt. They knew what crops grew well in North America, the timing of the year to plant those crops, and how to fertilize the soil so those crops would grow in a very productive manner. All right. And this will lead to a great harvest. So after the Pilgrims learn all these farming techniques from the Wampanoag tribe, the Pilgrims are going to invite the Wampanoag tribe over for a great feast to sort of thank them for giving them all of these farming techniques. And this great feast that occurs after the great harvest, the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag tribe in the autumn of 1621, comes to be known as the first Thanksgiving. So this great feast that occurs in the autumn of 1621 will eventually evolve into an American holiday of which we celebrate here in the United States every year. And that'll be all for today's discussion. Thank you for tuning in again, and I look forward to seeing you next time.